All right, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. I've been told that we have the green light to get going and started here. Thank you for attending this afternoon's webinar on downtown Rochester Rapid Transit. Many of you might be very familiar with me. My name is Jarrett Hubbard, and I am the project manager over downtown Rapid Transit working for the city of Rochester. Tonight, I'll have two other presenters with me presenting on the topic, and they are with our consultant team, SRF. To get us going, next, Alicia. Just a few of the housekeeping things that I think many of us are used to going through and hearing. We will be doing a couple of different sessions of pausing during the presentation and allowing you to essentially raise your hand. We're going to use that feature to notify that you have a question. After we come to those sections in which we will pause to take some questions. Our Alicia in their background will gladly unmute you when we recognize you and unmute your mic and allow you to ask your questions so that we can hear and start to have a conversation. As I think many of you are probably aware of, we are doing a recording of this session, and that recording will be posted on the project's webpage, hopefully tomorrow, if not in the next couple of days. If you have any additional questions or concerns about how the connection is going or how the webinar is going currently, we ask that you use the email address that you see there below to help you out. With that, we'll move on to kind of the agenda for this hour that we have set aside for us today. We'll take a few minutes here to once again review the project background and talk about some of the basics of where Rochester Rapid Transit has come from and where its path that it's been on for the last decade. We then will take a look at what we have currently proposed as the project and what that kind of really means for rapid transit and what we mean by bus rapid transit. We'll have a kind of a detailed explanation of that. And we'll conclude with a discussion of some of the few things that we have been deciding and talking about for the last, I would say, even year, more clearly about the project. And then we'll finally conclude with our last sessions of questions and answers. With that, we'll move along to the project background. As I've already kind of stated a little bit, Rochester Downtown Rapid Transit, or what was formerly known as the Circulator, has been a concept being discussed within the community for almost a decade now. But it wasn't until the Destination Medical Center Development Plan in 2015 that the concept really start to grow and develop into a real idea, real concept. With that plan, the city and Destination Medical Center started the process of really looking into the project and really looking into the idea. And the last few years, we've done we've done several additional studies and outreach, as you can see there on the screen, that kind of led us to this point of bus rapid transit. Big picture, what do those plans and documents tell us, and why do we have? What's the purpose and need for downtown rapid transit? Well, first off, roughly by 2040, those plans and documents documented that we'll have roughly additional 50,000 people and 50,000 jobs in the city of Rochester, and these numbers that you see in front of you are kind of growth numbers that we expect by 2040 or 2035 for the entire city of Rochester. These numbers, roughly additional 60,000 workers downtown and an additional, well, excuse me, additional 25 to 30 new workers for a total of 60,000 new workers downtown, with an additional 5,000 to 6,000 new residents downtown, are all downtown focused. And some of you might be asking the question of, these numbers were prepared a few years ago when we were showing growth and development in the community. Has the project and the city started to take a look at revising these numbers and adjusting these numbers for the current pandemic that we're going through and the resulting economic downturn? The answer is yes. We are closely monitoring the situation. We have open communications between the city and many of the downtown employers about what the future may hold. At the same time, we are closely monitoring not only is there effects in Rochester transit, but there's effects across the world on transit with the pandemic. So we are closely monitoring those ideas. I can say some of our transit numbers have started to rebound slightly since March, but they're still not what they were, say, this time last year. So with these additional employees, with these additional downtown residents, what does that mean for the city of Rochester, more specifically downtown? Well, it came to three conclusions. The first one is our streets. Downtown streets, as you can see behind me, my background behind me, will start to grow and become congested with all the additional cars and visitors that we have coming downtown. With all those additional cars that we would need, that would be coming downtown, we would need places to park them. And essentially, you can see from the second image that we would, to accommodate all those additional cars, we would need 7 additional blocks to be consumed with nothing just but parking lots or parking structures. So taking all that additional space just to park all those additional people would be a negative for all of downtown. And then finally, with all those additional employees and residents downtown, the streets themselves, we only have, as many of you know, we only have a select number of streets that do come downtown, and we cannot expand those streets or add additional lanes. So it's going to be tough with all those additional people if we don't try to figure out if everyone continues to drive their own personal car downtown. So that has resulted into what's been known as the downtown or the city's mode share target. Back in 2015, roughly 70% of the people coming downtown were using their own personal vehicles, and only about 10% were on transit. The goal is by 2035, 2040, that we would start to adjust these numbers, and we would grow those numbers of people using transit to come downtown up to, and if not near 30%, we would be riding on transit. It's important to note that you can also see, besides growing transit, we also hope to grow walking and biking and carpooling and ride sharing as well, to help minimize and reduce the number of cars coming to downtown. And to kind of give you an idea where we even stand, this is some numbers that were pulled just in the last couple years. But this graphic represents traffic as it is seen currently today on 2nd Street in downtown. And so essentially what this graphic is telling us is that of all the vehicles coming downtown, this is during the weekday morning peak, only 6% of those vehicles are buses. But with that being said, those 6% of vehicles are still carrying roughly 60% of the individuals coming to downtown to work, to live, or to visit for medical purposes. So that being said, 2nd Street is already a heavily utilized transit network corridor for the city, and we're hoping to grow these numbers even more so with the implementation of Rochester downtown transit. So the purpose, one big overall, we want to provide high quality downtown transportation for residents, commuters, businesses, patients, students, and all the visitors. We want to support the goals, that be economic and livability goals of the city and Destination Medical Center. And of course, as you just saw with the mode shift and the targets, increase the number of people riding transit and not utilizing their own vehicles coming downtown. So why do we need this? Once again, this just kind of repeats the same thing, that we're local and regional travel associated, that we're trying to grow the goals to accommodate those goals of the DMC development plan. We want to enhance the network and the economic development priorities of downtown. We want to mitigate those congestion ideas and concepts that we have growing in downtown that we talked about earlier, and once again, increase transit capacity for the overall network. More goals: increase transit use among residents and employees and visitors. We want to use transit to catalyze the existing and in future development in downtown to help support the livability and economic goals, as we previously discussed. We want to plan a cost-effective transit way to help make sure that we can move that many people quickly, and we want to finally support the sustainability and the active living goals that the community has as well. With that, we're going to take our first pause and see if anyone has any questions. And once again, we ask that you please utilize the raise your hand feature, and then our facilitator, Alicia, in the background will help to unmute you so that you can ask those questions.
All right, we have a couple of questions. First up will be Paula. I'm going to allow you to talk.
Hello, Paula. Are you there? Can you hear us?
You'll have to unmute.
Oh, hold on.
The unmute button. Okay, I got the unmute.
There you go.
Okay, took a minute for it to pop up. Okay, so when I just was glancing at the flash of the downtown map on like the last slide or so, I was looking at the library location area, and it looked to me like the going down from there, that the long-term plan includes permanent Kmart parking as part of the route planning.
Thank you for asking that question, Paula, because actually that graphic that was used in that image is an older graphic. I believe it was pulled out of the DMC development plan from roughly 5 years ago. You're going to see here in a few minutes the actual route that is proposed. That map and that route that was proposed was from 5 years ago. We're still working on the big picture vision of trying to implement kind of the goals that were outlined with that map. But the current route is from the west, what is currently known as Mayo's West parking lot, along 2nd Street, heading downtown. Then you would circle back on the south by using 3rd Avenue to 4th Avenue by the Government Center, back north on Broadway, and back out west again on 2nd Street. So I'm sorry, yes, that was an older graphic.
Okay, so in other words, 5 years ago, they were already planning on using the Kmart parking lot?
Paula, there were several different plans and ideas thrown out by the DMC development plan. And if you even take a closer look at that document, they had many other parking structures and garages, all sort of still very close to downtown. So I think, as you're kind of implying, is that our plans have changed significantly in those years, and we're still continually modifying those plans and adjusting to change those. With
okay,
that,
yeah.
I want to make sure we get other folks to.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, and that was my implication.
Thank you, Paula. Up next, let's go to Greg.
All right, you are allowed to talk. You'll just need to unmute.
Hi, Greg.
Hi there. So my question is, how will dedicated bus lanes be added to 2nd Street without removing existing automobile travel lanes?
Great question, Craig. In fact, I see that you've asked that question via email, so hopefully you'll see a similar response via email here in the next few hours from me as well on the same question. As Craig's just pointed out, it is as we'll see here in the second, it is kind of the direction of the current project to utilize what's known as business access transit lanes, or BAT lanes. These would be lanes that would allow to be, for the most part, used for transit vehicles. But if you're in your car, you would be allowed to make right-hand turns out of those. And we'll hear a little bit more about those in a second. But the current plan is to utilize the existing outside lane for that transit lane. In a few cases, that is the existing travel lane, and in a couple cases that might be what might be existing parking there. And so before we get too much further, I will say that is the plan. We are currently doing the traffic engineering studies to look to see if that will work, and if it will work, what are kind of the responses and things that we need to help mitigate that traffic and moving of that traffic off of 2nd Street. I will say that information will be coming forward here to the public very shortly. And what I mean by that is we actually have, we're actually looking at webinars, additional webinar next month in November, and then we'll probably hold off the next one. We'll probably skip December completely and go to January. And January's webinar will be exclusively to talk about the traffic and the BAT lanes and those effects. So we are still looking into that, and more to come.
Okay, thank you.
And I do not see anyone else's hands raised. So with that, maybe we'll continue on, and I will introduce Jim Gersema, engineer with SRF Consulting Firm.
Hello, everybody. I am the design manager for the consultant team for SRF, and I'll be covering the selected routes and the aspects of the Rochester Rapid Transit project. So the selected route goes from what's currently that Mayo West parking lot, as Jarrett referred to it, and is planned to be a transit village, so a development out on that site. Travels east into downtown and traverses a loop around the government center to make that turnaround to get back into the eastbound direction. It is roughly 3 miles long, and we have 8 stations along that route. It does utilize those business access and transit lanes along the corridor for a good portion of that length. It includes a transit center at the St. Mary's station, which also will include a pedestrian access tunnel between that transit center and St. Mary's Hospital. This project also will complete that reconstruction of 2nd Street with that section between 16th and 11th Avenues. And the the rapid transit project will include use of electric buses as part of that fleet for this service. By the numbers, the rapid transit project will operate every 5 minutes in the peak hours. So that'd be in the morning between 6 and 9, and in the afternoon between 3 and 6. And then outside of those hours, it'll be operating every 10 minutes. And so with that type of frequency, you don't need to look at your schedule and route map. When you're using this type of service, you can watch the platform and know that very quickly a bus will be there. It takes less than 15 minutes to get from one end of the route to the other. So 15 minutes between West Transit Village and the government center. We anticipate that on the opening day, opening year service will have roughly 11,000 transit riders a day. And this will operate during the weekdays between 5 in the morning and 11 at night, and on the weekends between 8 in the morning and 11 at night. So one of the benefits of BRT and the proposed BAT lanes, it does provide that opportunity for those higher occupancy buses to get through the corridor more efficiently. So that provides more capacity in the existing corridor, enhanced movement through the corridor for more people, and provides more options for people that might not have a personal vehicle. This also allows for parts of downtown that might be surface parking today to transition into higher density uses to facilitate that growth in downtown. So a little bit more about what bus rapid transit is, or BRT. This is a high quality service that's very similar to light rail transit or modern streetcar. It operates its own facility. In this case, that BAT lane. It has that high frequency. We talked about either every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes. So you have that sense of reliability that's going to be there. The stations that'll be placed in the corridor are more than just are more than bus stops. So it's more than a sign in the ground. These are established locations where there's a lot of amenities. And this is the right size solution for this project. The buses that are being looked at are 60 feet long. They have the capacity to handle that anticipated ridership with the type of frequency that we're talking about, and can be done and implemented less costly than other types of rail type service. These buses can operate in the existing lanes, existing pavement that's out there today. The stations and amenities that I'm talking about contain, in the case of our situation, a shelter that's going to have a roof over the head. They're going to be well lit. They're going to have options for fare collection on the platform, so you don't have to pay your fare on the bus. So you can board the bus more quickly. It's going to provide additional rider information. We'll have seating and bicycle parking, and provide a warning strip along the curb so that you understand where the edge of the platform is and where that bus will be boarding. Here are a few examples that are similar in nature to what's being discussed and evaluated for the Rochester Rapid Transit Project. The image on the left is from Richmond, Virginia. That's from the Pulse line BRT that's out there. And so those stations operate on the edge of the roadway for their BRT system. They include a lot of those amenities that we just talked about. That yellow stretch there, that's that tactile edge there, the curb where the bus will board. The image on the right is in downtown Chicago. That's the Loop Link project that they have there, where you can see the scale of their station and how those people use it in that context. Within the corridor, there are some parameters that we're looking at, being that we are looking to operate this within the existing right-of-way and the constraints of how the corridor looks today. We're looking to meet standards for pedestrians and multimodal features, maintain business and resident access, and incorporate streetscape elements into the corridor where appropriate. So with that, we've come to our second place where we're going to pause for any questions. So Alicia, would you look for any raised hands?
Yes, we have Paula and then Joel. So Paula, you are up.
Hi, okay. As a person with multiple sclerosis, and though I'm not currently using a wheelchair, I do use walkers and other things. And I noticed when I was at on the Chicago slide there didn't seem to be any place for wheelchair seating to be in and covered. And I wasn't sure on the left-hand slide if those, there were some fixed down benches and then it had some flipped up sort of looking benches. And I was wondering if those were intended to be where wheelchairs would be. I was downtown at the bus stops across from the Mayo Clinic not too long ago and was measuring them, and they don't fit wheelchairs in them. So are you considering that aspect of the bus shelters? And are you going to use solar to heat it or what?
Yeah, so I'll take the first part of that question right now. In terms of accessibility at these platforms, we are looking to ensure that we are meeting accessibility, and in many cases, we're looking to go beyond and exceed what's there as a standard for accessibility. We are going to be providing spots for wheelchairs in terms of how that fits within the benches and the shelter space. And one aspect of this BRT that we didn't cover in our slides is the fact that we're using an elevator platform in combination with a low floor bus. And so this is a combination where there's a kind of a zero entry into the bus or level boarding. So that'd be, from a wheelchair perspective, a roll on type situation without a ramp deployment. And so we are continuing to work with our committees on the project and evaluate the extent of all the accessibility aspects that we want to put in our platform situations and in our shelters. And so that'll be an ongoing conversation that we'll continue to have throughout the course of the design. In terms of the second part of the question about solar and heat, those are technologies and amenities that we're still working through. We have not selected how the shelters will be powered or how they're going to be heated. We do anticipate some sort of heat, if that's an on-demand push button radiant heat or some other method, but we have not yet selected what that type of technology would be for those platform shelters.
Thank you.
All right, next up, I will allow Joel to talk. Oh, I'm sorry, Joel. I'm not able to enable you to speak, so if you can send your question in the Q&A, I will read it to Jim. And while we're waiting for that, Kelly also has a question, so I will allow Kelly to talk.
Hi, Jim. I just had a quick question. You had mentioned it was 15 minutes from one end to the other end. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's our anticipated bus travel time. Now that's anticipating the future condition there.
So then it's still going to stop at all 9 bus stops plus traffic lights. I just seems kind of unrealistic.
Yeah, and so that's one of the advantages of what we're trying to do with the BAT lanes there and providing that aspect for the transit vehicles to be able to stop at the 8 stations and navigate the traffic signals there. We're also using technology with the traffic signals, allowing the buses and the signals to talk to each other. So similar to how emergency vehicles have emergency vehicle preemption, the buses will have what we call transit signal priority. It's not exactly the same thing. I like to explain it as if a fire engine would be demanding that green light, where in the case of buses, they're just politely asking for a green light if it works within the traffic signal cycle there. And so that does help the buses get through the traffic signals a little quicker. And then with the off-board fare payment and that level boarding that we talked about, the buses are able to stop and get back going more quickly at each platform. So the dwell time there, what we call when the bus is stopped, is shorter than what it is for your traditional local bus service.
Okay. It just seems like you'd almost have to push people off if you're going to make a 15-minute time limit.
Yeah, there's more work to be done there. We're continuing to look at that, but those are our preliminary numbers at this point. All right, and then Alicia, you have the question from Joel.
Yes, Joel asked if the sidewalks are sloped down in front of stops or raised drops, which I interpret as, steps.
Yep, and so I mentioned that the platforms are raised to 12 inches to line up with the low floor of the bus. We do anticipate having, or we not anticipate, we will be having a sloped condition from that 12-inch heights down to the regular sidewalk height that meets the ADA requirements. It is possible that in many cases there'll be supplemental areas where you can enter in that platform with steps that has not been designed or determined yet, but we're looking for as smooth and gradual transitions from that existing sidewalk situation to that BRT platform elevation at each location. If there's no further questions, then I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Adele Hall, to cover the next section of the presentation.
Great, thanks, Jim. My name is Adele Hall, and I am a planner at SRF, and I am the planning manager for the Rochester Rapid Transit Project. I'm going to cover a little more of the process that is underway and is yet to come to bring this project to fruition. You do the next slide. Thanks, Alicia. So this timeline shows on the left, I'll start there. Jarrett earlier alluded to the integrated transit studies that were done even before this timeline begins. And that was a lot of the foundational work that led to this project. But in 2019 was when the City Council took action. They selected bus rapid transit as the mode of transit for this project. And they also selected a route that went from the West Lot on 2nd Street Southwest, excuse me, and then turned south on Broadway to Graham Park, or what was called the East Transit Village. Then in May of this year, the council acted again to actually phase the project. So the map that Jim showed earlier is phase 1 of that locally preferred alternative. And that is the focus of the project. And that is, so Jim shared kind of all of the high-level parameters. What is bus rapid transit? What are our basic, what are we basically trying to do with this project? And now in this square of project design, environmental review, and final engineering, we're really going through the process of applying that bus rapid transit concept uniquely to Rochester and this corridor. So we do that over the course of the next couple of years. The outcome of that process is final design plans that are ready to hand over to a construction firm. Then there is construction for a couple of years and then operations starting fairly early in 2025. So there's a note on this slide about the co-design process. I will actually get into that in a little more detail on the coming slides. So that timeline slide highlighted design and environmental review, and we wanted to kind of pull apart those two efforts, let you know kind of what to expect within those efforts. So when we say we're designing the project, we are specifically talking about designing some key elements. One of them is the station architecture and urban design. So the station platform itself, all of the features of the station platform, and then the immediate environment surrounding the station platform. So all the things you see in this example picture are things that are under consideration. Things like, what does the roof look like? What does the overall structure look like? Does it include indoor climate controlled space? Does it include semi-enclosed space? What are the real-time signage features? What does the fare collection system look like? Are there benches? Are there other types of seating? Are there trash receptacles? Is there bike parking? What does it look like? So all of those are questions that we are answering through the design process relative to the station platform itself. And those are the decisions that our co-design team is really involved in. I think some of you are maybe familiar with co-design. If you're not, we very recently, the city reached out and solicited applications from Rochester residents who are interested in being involved in the rapid transit project and were connected in their communities, and asked them to basically join the project team over the course of the next 9 or so months through next spring, and really get involved in these decisions that shape the station architecture and design. So in addition to the station architecture, we are also making a lot of decisions about that guideway. And in this case, we call it a guideway, but it's really those business access and transit lanes, those BAT lanes that we've already talked about quite a bit. We're also talking about how bike and pedestrian connections fit in with that guideway. And then, of course, some of the other benefits that the buses receive. We already talked about transit signal priority is another example of guideway engineering. So those are kind of the main things that we're focused on with design, and all of that. Then next slide, Alicia, thank you. All of that builds up to a definition of the rapid transit project. And when we have that definition, which we're aiming for near the end of this year, then we conduct an environmental analysis on that project. And the environmental analysis is meant to, it does a couple of things. It complies with federal and state environmental law for the project. That's important, right? But maybe more importantly for Rochester residents, it is the place where we take a look at how the project affects all sorts of aspects of the community, whether those are natural features such as wetlands, or they are built features such as neighborhoods or traffic and vehicular traffic. This is where we take a look at what are the impacts the project has on these various resources in Rochester. Are any of those negative impacts? And if they are, how can the project adjust to avoid those impacts or mitigate those impacts? So we will go through that exercise starting in roughly in 2021, and should have information to share probably later in fall, probably of 2021, about that effort. And next slide. So the end of the environmental process is a significant milestone because it means that once the environmental process is complete and you have an understanding of what the impacts of the project are and how those can be mitigated, you finalize your project definition, and then you can begin your final engineering plans. So this is when Jim and his team get to work on drawing up the engineering drawings that will be handed over to the construction team to actually construct the project. So these drawings look complicated to me because I'm a planner. These are conceptual engineering drawings. The final design drawings do not look like this. They are much, much, much more specific. I keep faking you out, Alicia, don't I, on the slide changes? Sorry about that. So throughout these design and engagement efforts, over the next couple of years, there will be a lot of opportunities to get involved in the project in one way or another. Our goal with community engagement on this project is to make it accessible. We know this is a diverse project area with diversity in terms of race and ethnicity, income, languages spoken in the corridor, and also, of course, familiarity with transit. And we have a lot of transit riders. We have some people who've never ridden transit before. And so we're trying to provide a lot of project information and then also ask for input on some specific project decisions where public feedback and input from residents can really affect the definition of the project and what it looks like and what it feels like to future riders. Some key areas that where input can affect the shape of the project are on safety, on the environmental impacts, so the findings that we come to in that environmental document. And then, of course, we talked a lot about the station architecture and the urban design. And next slide. So how are we going to conduct community engagement over these next couple of years? We, of course, right now are sticking just to virtual methods because of COVID, but in non-COVID, non-pandemic times, we like to get out and talk to people in person. We like to do that in forums that we as project staff host, and we ask people to come to us, but we also really like to show up to places where people already are and be present at community events or pop up in a grocery store and just try to catch people on their way to and from in their course of their normal day, in case this project will affect them and they're interested in it and might not otherwise see the information. For now, though, we're trying to, I think, sort of replicate those in-person methods as much as we can virtually. So if you've been to the Rochester Rapid Transit webpage lately on the city's page, you'll see we've added a lot of project information there, a lot more detail on the project. We are doing regular posts on social media, and especially when we have events like this webinar coming up, trying to promote those. We have a few surveys on tap around those big project decisions. And then we'll also be doing a couple of informational videos about key aspects of the project. Then you see down below that the picture of the map. This is a wiki map, and it is available now. And it's a forum for, you can go to this wiki map and place a comment anywhere along the map. If it's specific to a place, this is a great way to comment on the project. But you can also see other people's comments and add to them, and project staff look at this regularly. There is also a project email address and a phone number if you want to just ask a question or make a comment or talk something over with project staff. That is also available. Finally, if you are part of a community group or your neighborhood association, any other kind of group, we are happy as project staff to come and visit your, I presume, probably virtual event and provide some information about the project or listen in on a conversation you might be having in that space about the project or something relative to it. So that's, I think, all that I had today. One last opportunity now for questions on anything I presented or anything you heard earlier.
All right, first up we have Paula.
Thank you. I have two concerns. The first one is on the design of the bus stops in terms of safety. Are you planning on having any panic buttons or what kind of lighting, cameras, some kind of safety feature, because somebody might not have time to get their cell phone out of their purse and call 911. And the second part has to do with the leaving out in your diversity list people with disabilities and also visitors, since there is a high possibility that it won't just be Mayo Clinic employees using the route. Thanks.
Absolutely, Paula, thank you for that. We'll make sure to update our materials. I think I speak for the team when I say that we are absolutely thinking about folks with disabilities, people are using mobility devices or walkers, as we're considering all the aspects of design of this project, in particular at the stations, of course, but also in the vehicle itself as well. I'll start answering the station or the safety at stations question, and maybe ask Jim to tag on if I miss anything here. I think all of the things that you described, Paula, the kind of emergency call button, cameras, lighting are all typical features in bus rapid transit stations. I think I would expect to see all of those incorporated into the program of each station. It's probably more about what the specific layout is and the design of those features. That's the question. I think, from other safety perspectives too, there are other design considerations that we can take, things like landscaping and screening and, keeping the platforms feeling visible and open. So there's no kind of places to hide or kind of, feeling exposed, but also offering comfort is a needle to thread. There you go. That's the analogy I was looking for. So I think those are some of the things that we have in mind in terms of safety. I don't know, Jim, is there anything I missed there?
No, you covered that very well, Adele. We are proceeding with all of those elements, and we are coordinating regularly with Rochester Public Transit and the Rochester Police Department to make sure that we have many of those things very well covered.
I don't see any additional hands raised or questions in the Q&A feature.
Yeah, so I'll take this time to maybe pause and thank everyone for attending and give maybe anyone, if you have any additional more questions, now is a great time to chime on in and get your opinion stated so that we can make sure we can start working some of that, just like Paula just said in the last question, make sure that we're covering all the bases in this early part of the design. All right. I thank you for all the questions that we have received. I think today was a very useful time to help continue the conversation that we're having with the community about downtown transit and what it may look like in the future. With that being said, I thank you once again. As you heard me say earlier, we are planning to do another webinar next month. Actual time and date have still yet to be determined, but we will hopefully have that very soon. And we'll make sure that we now have your email addresses. We'll make sure to get that information to all of you who attended here today so that you can attend the next session. The focus that I will say of November session will be kind of more on those stations and those platforms and what they look like and how they might feel. So we'll dive into that subject in November. With that, I'll take one more second to see if there's any other questions. I know people are dropping off quick, which is fine. All right. With that being said, I appreciate everyone's time and energy and focus and participation along in the project. Hope to see many of you next month to talk more about the stations.